Autoethnography as Engaged Pedagogy, Putting Voice Back into Academic Writing by Alyssa Connell. Is what I write worth reading? Do these lines carry meaning beyond their humped, swirled, crossed forms? Autoethnography is a type of autobiographical writing that highlights personal experience and connects real life to our writing. I was first introduced to academic writing in the 8th grade when I took English 1 for high school credit. The year prior, our English assignments were all creative, personal, and included ourselves. However, once introduced to high school curriculum, I was taught to write myself out of my writing. It was not until I was in college, pursuing my undergraduate degree in English, that I experienced the ability to write myself back into my own work. And even then, it was only in a creative writing class that I was able to do so. Almost exclusively, academic writing employs a cold, detached tone, where personality and experience give way to formulaic writing. Furthermore, this style of writing is taught, encouraged, and often required throughout secondary and post secondary schooling. As I mentioned, in my own educational experience, I did not encounter a creative writing class until I was in my 20s, and first explored autoethnography a decade later in my graduate coursework. This background leads to the question, why are we taught to write ourselves and our experiences out of our writing? Additionally, what would happen if we wrote ourselves back into our own academic writing? Using autoethnography as a form of engaged pedagogy, specifically in high school English classes, will help establish meaningful connections between teacher and students, as well as revitalize the student's relationship to writing. The personal is so often removed from academic writing that students' individual voices are lost. Using autoethnography as a pedagogical practice through exercises such as poetic inquiry adds their unique voices back into academic writing, allowing for more inclusion and better relationships between students and writing. Bell Hooks writes that engaged pedagogy makes the classroom a place where wholeness is welcomed and students can be honest, even radically open. Combining this overarching philosophy with the practical application of autoethnography is the high school classroom will reinforce the desired results of inclusion and openness that come from engaged pedagogy, specifically in the instances of learning and producing academic writing. In Teaching to Transgress, Education as the Practice of Freedom, Bell Hooks suggests one such theoretical practice where learning should be a union of mind, body, and spirit, wherein teachers should be striving to create participatory spaces for sharing of knowledge, where both student and teacher are active contributors to the pool of knowledge. Hooks continues the discussion by asserting that this type of learning environment creates an educational space where both academic and personal experiences are welcomed to intermingle. This is in line with using autoethnography as a form of engaged pedagogy, as autoethnography is the intersection of the academic and the personal. This, in effect, allows both teachers and students to embark on a journey of educational growth together. Hooks continues her discourse on the importance of engaged pedagogy through a dialogue with her colleague Ron Skapp, where they discuss the importance of liberating teachers from behind their desks, both literally and metaphorically. They posit that teachers, as teachers, come physically close. Suddenly, what I have to say is not coming from behind this invisible line, this wall of demarcation that implies anything that from this side of the desk is gold is truth. Rather, once a teacher is more physically engaged, it facilitates a dialogue where students are suddenly an active part of the conversation. This supports my assertion to use autoethnography as engaged pedagogy, as this practice allows for students to be more involved and open, which enables the success of autoethnography in the classroom. They then moved the discussion to the need to teach differently, because the triumph of liberatory pedagogy was that we had the space to interrogate in a way that traditional practices prevent. Lastly, they discuss the need for teachers to be intentional because they are responsible for fostering a classroom that students can learn and grow in. At this point, you may be wondering how these theories combine and work in an actual classroom. But first, I want you to think about the most influential teacher you've had. What was their classroom like? What was that teacher's personality like? What kind of environment did they foster with their teaching practices? For myself, I thrive in a classroom where I'm comfortable to be my authentic self and feel that my voice is a valued contribution to the class. In fact, most people find they do best in environments such as this, even if it is not within a classroom. And as Peter Blatchford and Anthony Russell state, There is a strong tradition of work in psychology which argues that peer relations have particular value for social and even cognitive development. I posit that this also extends to the student teacher relationship, supported by Bell Hook's thoughts on an engaged classroom. Through engaged pedagogy, students are active participants in their learning, which supports stronger relationships between peers as well as the instructor. The students and teacher take an approach where they use their lived experiences to reflect and make meaningful contributions to the class, where all diversity is accepted, appreciated, and celebrated. This type of classroom, informed by these theories, is achieved through consistent, open communication between students, teachers, peers, reflective assessments, and an emphasis on bringing your authentic self to the classroom. Similarly, using a combination of these theories promotes an inquiry based learning system where students can ask questions, research answers, and reflect. This approach emphasizes students maintaining ownership of their learning by fostering critical thinking and keeping curiosity piqued. Furthermore, this process can also be applied to asking a question about themselves, introspective thinking, and exploring the answers that arrive, which lands at autoethnography as the center point of the fusion of engaged pedagogy and writing to write the self back into academic writing. The implications of this approach within the classroom reach beyond exploring and crafting a different type of academic writing. According to Michael Barr, using autoethnography in the classroom promotes students' own self awareness of their positionality and offers students a legitimate way of reading and writing material that was academic in nature, but not stultifying. Through autoethnography as a form of engaged pedagogy, students have the freedom to include themselves in all aspects of their coursework. And why would we, as educators, discourage students from including themselves in what they write? In fact, it gives us a unique opportunity to learn about cultures, social conditions, and insights that we might not be privy to based on our own experiences. Ultimately, this approach of allowing students to write their personal experiences into their work will yield better writing relationships than the traditional method of more formal, detached academic writing because the reflective process of autoethnography allows students to include knowledge that others do not have. By using their own stories, autoethnography becomes a form of engaged pedagogy where students and teacher have a working relationship, understanding the requisite trust for the vulnerability necessary to include the self in writing that others will read. Through using autoethnography, we can arrive at a point of student empowerment. We can foster control of what students have the ability to write, where they take control of their own writing. They have autonomy. Writing can become an expressive outlet for them, and we can destigmatize writing being this daunting task that seems impossible. Autoethnography in the classroom can enhance the relationships between teachers and students through shared personal experiences that have the ability to establish trust and openness. Through this, a classroom becomes a collaborative environment where mutual understanding is achieved. Using autoethnography in the classroom can also cultivate a love for writing through our lived experiences. Using this pedagogical practice, students will have an instilled confidence, realize that their voices matter, find mutual respect for each other and their teachers, experience a love for writing, and a love for their own experiences. While conversations exist about autoethnography as a form of pedagogy, there's a gap in the scholarly conversation about autoethnography specifically as a type of engaged pedagogy. Michael Barr examines this idea at the graduate level, where students approached the freedom offered by autoethnographic writing, and in the end, many reported that the course had changed their views of writing. And while research exists about autoethnography as pedagogy in upper level undergraduate and graduate courses, there's a lack of research discussing how this methodology applies to high school students, where formal academic writing is initially taught. Reflecting back to my initial question, why are we taught to write our lived experiences out of our writing? Perhaps it is because of tradition and maintaining some kind of academic status quo. Using autoethnography as engaged pedagogy, specifically in the high school classroom, illustrates what can happen when we give ourselves the permission to allow our experiences to influence our writing. That is, students are more engaged with their writing, have better relationships to the writing process, and form deeper, more meaningful connections with assignments as well as instructors as they cultivate a classroom of inclusion and understanding. As other scholars of autoethnography have shown, similar results occur in undergraduate and graduate level courses, so one can conclude that similar results would happen at the high school level. For continued study, I plan to implement this pedagogical theory with future students in my upcoming school year as a case study to test the real world implications of my hypothesis. The implications of this hypothetical pedagogical application to the high school classroom encompasses students, teachers, curriculum developers, and writers of varying levels. If we can shed the tradition that academic writing needs to be cold and detached and devoid of the personal, we can revolutionize writing from the very beginning of when students are taught how to write academically. For students, this has the ability to instill confidence in their writing by telling them that their voices and experiences matter and are important to the things they write. For teachers, using autoethnography as engaged pedagogy can foster a classroom environment of mutual respect and understanding and open new channels of inclusive communication between them and their students. And for curriculum writers, the implications are such that they should be mindful of creating curriculum that empowers teachers to achieve and maintain these relationships to writing and their students through integrating autoethnography in their curriculum designs. My hope is that individuals in the field of education, and specifically English education, can use the idea of autoethnography as engaged pedagogy to further instill and cultivate a love for writing and a love for the self.